Try this parallel universe. My name is Bill. Welcome to the Night Terrors Weekend Show. And we're starting right now. Welcome to Eldergrown and Takahama Plateau. Welcome to Gotcha Man and Green Tea. My Banned by YouTube series drops an episode every Wednesday morning. YouTube made me take down 3 years of my videos. They're no longer on the channel. The only way you can see them is to catch them on Wednesday. If you value what I do on the Night Terror streams and in the Night Terrors videos, one way to support the channel is through Patreon. Become a patron of the show by clicking on the Patreon link in the description below. Thank you for supporting the show. All right, let's get started. We're going to start with the Gadianton Canyon incident. Also sometimes known as a highway space warp, but it's really a temporary phase into a parallel universe or alternate dimension. Welcome to David Bryce Jr. And this story is at unexplainedmysteries.com in the forum, and it's posted by Columbo. It's entitled Gadianton Space Warp, or Gadianton Canyon Space Warp. And Mr. Columbo begins. One of the strangest parallel universe cases took place in southeastern Utah, near the railroad crossing of Medina, on the edge of Escalante Desert. There's a slip rock canyon. Welcome to Blunghole. And it looks like Eric Rookstool. Welcome, sir. Eric says he hopes everybody's well. Thank you, Eric. Rhino Rex has arrived, and then with a suggestion. Let's click that open. Redirect notice. I guess is what that is. Let's go to the news. There we go. Oh, that looks good. Thank you, Rhino. All right. There's a slick rock canyon just north of Medina that bears the name of Gadianton. It's a name that brings a shudder to God-fearing Latter-day Saints. And here's a quote. Among the freighters who hauled supplies to Pioche, Nevada in the 1870s, there grew up a legend that a rocky gorge near the Nevada line was haunted by the Gadianton robbers, a terroristic brotherhood which the Book of Mormon explains as having sprung up among the Nephites and the Lamanites in the century before Christ. End of quote. Welcome to Pedro Rojas Cervantes. Got a little confused looking at the name there. It looks like it's like all run together now or something. But welcome, Pedro. The Gadiantons were a mysterious sect of assassins, quite similar to the Bruder Schweigen of Germany or the Kamaruka of Yugoslavia. Quote, wide-eyed freighters told tales of rocks closing the way, and of the canyon folding up to entrap them, end quote. Eventually, the old Gadianton tales were forgotten in Utah's Iron County until May of 1972, when 4 co-eds from Southern Utah University were driving back to their dorm in Cedar City after spending Saturday at the local rodeo in Pioche. Jana North had the wheel of her father's '71 Chevrolet Nova. Carol Abbott was in the passenger seat. In the back were Lisa Rochefort and Bethany Gordon. It was after 10 p.m. when the girls crossed the Utah-Nevada state line, 9 miles east of Medina. And they were anxious to get back to the campus before their house mother, Mrs. Mortensen, locked the doors of the dorm. That stretch of Utah Highway 56 is pretty desolate. All sand and I don't know how to say this word. It's some kind of plant. Ocotillo, and Spanish bayonet, with the red sandstone bluffs on the northern horizon. So the girls were pretty happy when they finally spotted the Union Pacific Railroad crossing at Medina. Just past the rails, Jenna noticed something strange. 2 sets of blacktop highway heading off into the desert, one veering sharply to the southeast, the other shorting northeast toward the canyon country further north. Carol asked, "Which one do we take?" "Left," said Jenna. She knew that Cedar City was 46 miles to the northeast, and she guessed that the canyon road would bring them home much sooner. 5 minutes later, the Chevy entered the Wreck Rod Canyon. Or how about the Red Rock Canyon? What did I say? The Wreck Rod. The Wreck Rod is a different thing. The Red Rock Canyon. Jenna, who had been chatting with her friends, suddenly noticed that the car's headlights were shining more brightly on the pavement. Looking closer, she noticed the white centerline was gone. Instead of black asphalt, they were driving on white concrete. Carol exclaimed, "Jenna, up ahead." The highway ended abruptly at a rocky cliff face. Jenna stepped down hard on the brake pedal. Fishtailing, the Chevy screeched to a stop in front of the cliff. "Great, a dead end," said Jenna, putting the gear into reverse and swinging around the car's nose. You would think they'd put up a warning sign. Bethany complained, "Now we've got to go all the way back to Medina." Lisa chimed in, "We're never going to make curfew this way." Jenna assured them, "We'll make good time once we're back on the state highway." Minutes passed. Jenna began to feel uneasy. They were still rolling along, hemmed in by Red Canyon walls, but they should have been back out in the open desert by that time. The canyon gradually gave way to open country. The girls gasped. Instead of moonlit desert, they saw grain fields on the right, and a large lake, and a large lake with stands of ponderosa pine on the left. Carol looked around. "This isn't Medina." Jenna said, "We must have gotten turned around back there." "Where are we?" Up ahead, Jenna spied a roadhouse tavern and an adjacent parking lot. It seemed to have a neon sign, but she couldn't read it. What should have been letters were brightly lit squiggles and curlicues. They noticed some men just coming out of the building. "There are some guys," said Carol. "Welcome to Shane Riley." Bethany said, "Are they cute?" Lisa said, "Let's find out," and rolled down the rear passenger window. "We don't have time for this," said Jenna. "Relax," she said. "I'm only going to ask him how to get back to the highway." As Jenna slowed down, she noticed a good deal of consternation among the men, as if they'd been startled by some unknown animal. Lisa turned her head to the open window and hailed them, and then let out a terrified scream. Jenna turned around in her seat. "Get out of here," the girl screamed. "Do you have your shoes with you?" "Jack 11, welcome, sir." "T Plateau, sadly, I do not." You can see the sad countenance on my face. "I'm so sorry, T Plateau. I do not have my shoes with me. I do have a nice jacket here, and the hood may come up at some point in time. It is chilly in this studio tonight." Welcome, Jonathan A80. Anyway, Lisa's screaming, and Bethany says, "Step on it." With tires spitting sand, the Chevy zoomed away from the building. Jenna stepped down hard on the gas. The lake flew by on her left. "They're coming after us," Bethany shouted. "Go faster, Jenna." 4 odd-looking automobiles followed in their wake. Egg-shaped vehicles mounted on tricycle wheels. That is, with 2 large wheels in the front and a smaller wheel in the rear. A single bright white headlight shone from the front of each pursuing car. They made a strange whirring or buzzing sound as they rolled along. Go faster, they're gaining on us. Ahead, the road led back into a red rock canyon. Where's the part that says that the people they saw didn't look human? I guess they left out that part in this version, but that's an important detail. The people they saw didn't look human. That's why they screamed. Ahead, the road led back into a red rock canyon. Jana's Chevy plunged into it at 80 miles an hour. The road was so narrow it seemed to hem them in. The Chevy's tires kicked up a billowing cloud of dust, and they could no longer see their pursuers. Minutes later, roaring out of the canyon, they were back into familiar desert. All at once, the road vanished. The headlights showed nothing but sagebrush and that other plant I can't say. The Chevy bucked and jostled it like a wild bronc. Jenna hit the brakes, but it was too late. The car side-skidded down an arroyo and came to rest at the bottom. Welcome to Caius Posthumus Turnus. Caius asks, is this a parallel universe with another Earth or a different planet altogether? This is a parallel Earth, sir. Welcome to Feathers. Shaking uncontrollably, the girls emerged from the car, miraculously unhurt. The Chevy took the worst of it with a couple of flat tires, numerous dings in the bumper, and a missing hubcap. Jenna took one look and clapped both hands to her forehead. My dad's gonna kill me, she said. Lisa, however, was near hysterical. Oh, here we go. Here we get the description right here. She sat on the ground and hugged the knees of her bell-bottom blue jeans, weeping and moaning, and she kept mumbling they were not human. The girls stayed with the car until sunrise. Then they walked a couple of miles due south. Were they glad when they found the familiar blacktop of Highway 56? Less than 1 hour later, they flagged down a cruiser of the Utah Highway Patrol. Trooper Vic Lundquist, who investigated the case, noted several circumstances that were never adequately explained. Number 1, there were no tire tracks showing where the Chevy had left Highway 56 in Medina. Number 2, tire tracks from the wrecked Chevy extended only 200 yards back into the desert and ended abruptly. Number 3, no one could explain how the Chevy had gotten nearly 2 miles north of Highway 56 without leaving any physical trace of its passage through the rough desert terrain. And finally, number 4, although volunteers searched diligently, no trace of the Chevy's right front hubcap was ever found. Yeah, I'm sure they called out a whole team for that. If Utah's Gadianton Canyon is, as some people claim, a gateway to another dimension, then perhaps Jenna's missing hubcap is a prime exhibit, an alien artifact, or on display in a museum on that parallel Earth. And that's the end of that part of the story. I do have another parallel universe tale here coming up at this time, and that is here at brightside.me, and it's entitled Mysterious Man from a Non-Existent Continent. Who was he? And we don't have a credited author here, so the anonymous author begins. The theory of parallel worlds has been discussed in the community for a very long time. Unfortunately, we're not developed enough yet to prove or disprove it, although physicists have proved it. This must be an old story. But if it's still an interesting theory, we should... it is still an interesting theory. And since we have a lot of unusual urban legends about people from parallel realities, we should check out a few of these tales. This one is about a man from a non-existent country. The story took place in 1851 in a small German village, Frankfurt an der Oder. a lost man came out to the local villagers asking for help. The man introduced himself as Jofar Voren. He spoke very poor German and had a very strong accent. I guess they mean foreign accent, an accent foreign to Germans. The man himself claimed he spoke Laxar and Abram, languages that don't actually exist on our Earth. He claimed to be from Laxaria, a country on the mainland called Sakria, separated from Europe by a huge ocean. However, none of these places exist on our map of Earth. People sent Jofar to the local authorities. He talked to a psychiatrist, but the doctor concluded that the man was totally sane. An investigation by the local police also revealed nothing suspicious. Jofar Voren claimed that the purpose of his visit to Europe was to find his long-lost brother. He survived a shipwreck and found himself near the village. They showed him a map of the world and a globe, and asked him to indicate the place where he crashed. But he didn't recognize anything familiar. He seemed to have extensive knowledge about his home world. Jofar named 5 main continents: Sakria, Aflar, Astar, Auslar, and Oiplar. His story was considered plausible. Scientists from Frankfurt decided to send the man to Berlin for further research. Berlin. However, during the trip, he had something like a seizure. The man jumped out of the carriage and disappeared into the surrounding wood. I guess that's a picture of Jofar. And that actually looks like a picture from Germany. Wilde Weiber. Despite a long search, no traces of Jofar were found. He seemed to have disappeared as mysteriously as he had arrived. Inspector Leboeuf, who was assigned to escort him to Berlin, thought that this man could be a being from another world, and that he returned from where he came from. And that's the second incident. Welcome to I Am Tino-san. Welcome, Tino-san. We're doing another short one here. Elderground says, I'm guessing lar is the Loxarian word for land. Thank you, Elder. Or should we continue with one more tale here? Let's do one more tale. The next one is the lady on Highway 167. This one happened on October the 20th, 1969. It was first reported in 1988 in the magazine Strange. The article tells about 2 men, LC and his business partner, Charlie. One afternoon, LC and Charlie were driving along Highway 167 in western Louisiana. Discussing work, they drove towards the oil center of Lafayette. The highway was empty at first, but then the men noticed a very old and very slow car ahead. The men started discussing this mysterious car. They had not been produced for several decades, but this one looked quite new. The men thought it was thanks to the owner's care. They slowed down to get a better look at the car. LC noticed a bright orange sign on it that said 1940. Had a bright orange sign saying 1940 on the car. Don't you mean the inspection sticker on the license plate? Sure, they had stickers in 1940, right? They saw a driver. It was a young woman in old-fashioned clothes, a hat with a long feather, a fur coat, even though it was warm outside. There was a child sitting next to her, also dressed in a big coat and a hat. Elsie and Charlie wanted to talk to her, but then they noticed the expression on her face. Welcome, Synchro 505. Michael provides all the incidental music for the show. Thank you, Mike. The woman was looking around in panic, almost on the verge of crying. Elsie called out to her and asked her if she needed help. She nodded and he gestured for her to park on the side of the road. But when the men also parked, they looked behind them and noticed that the woman's car had disappeared. They looked around the highway in shock. She couldn't have gone somewhere far at such a rate of speed, but the car was nowhere to be found. After some time, another man drove up to Elsie and Charlie. He saw everything that happened and claimed that the car had simply disappeared. The man talked about the incident for several hours. When they reached the city, they contacted the cops, but the police couldn't help them. Apart from their words, there was no confirmation of the existence of the car. The case was discussed in the local newspaper and then was forgotten. That's the end of that incident. Then they cover Gadianton Canyon, which we have already done. Let's see if that's the last one. How many did they promise us? The tracks ended were for the Chevrolet. Yeah, that's it for the story. I guess they had 3 incidents. Is that what they said? Oh, they didn't give a number. They start with the mysterious man. Time for the first user suggestion. That's going to be from T Plateau. And that is, let's go where that is. Let's get rid of these two. Let's go where that is. Probably here, because I'm going to be searching for this idea. Who killed Barry L. Canyon of Sealab 3? And why was the Barreline canister empty? Yeah, I found some information on this. At, whoops, wrong one. At everything.explained.today. Everything.explained.today. And there's no author listed, but the article is entitled Barry L. Cannon Explained. They have his early life and education. He was born in 1935, and he was mysteriously unalived in 1969 while under fathoms of water on Sealab 3. In fact, let's pick up with Sealab 3 right here, near the current top. There we go. In 1969, Cannon was assigned to Team 1 for the Sealab 3 project, which would take place off San Clemente Island. He was one of 4 members of Team 1, assigned to open and secure the habitat, along with fellow aquanauts Robert Barth, Richard Blackburn, and John Reeves. On February the 16th of that year, the Sealab 3 habitat sprang a leak. Cannon, Barth, Blackburn, and Reeves were twice sent down to Sealab in the Personnel Transfer Capsule, or the PTC. That's a Personnel Transfer Capsule, in an attempt to repair the problem. Shortly after 0500 hours, that's in the morning, folks. That's early. On February the 17th, Cannon began to convulse while working on the exterior of the habitat. Barth tried to save him, holding his head in the breathable gas pocket of the skirt surrounding the Sealab's entrance, and unsuccessfully attempting to force the mouthpiece of the emergency aqualung regulator between Cannon's teeth. Finally, Barth dragged Cannon back toward the PTC, or the Personnel Transfer Capsule, where his fellow aquanauts helped him bring Cannon inside, and Reeves and Blackburn attempted resuscitation. When the PTC reached the surface, it was obvious that Cannon was unalive. His body was placed in the outer airlock of the deck decompression chamber. I'm going to make a note. I forgot to get the time here. I'm thinking approximately equal to or after 18 minutes after the hour for that one, for that break. Cannon's funeral was, wait, that's a little bit early. His body was placed in the outer airlock of the deck decompression chamber, returned to surface pressure, and brought to San Diego Naval Hospital. His funeral was held at Humphrey Mortuary in Cuela Vista, California, on February the 19th. He was buried in Central Florida. Aftermath. It was widely reported in the news media that Cannon had died of a heart attack. But the official Board of Inquiry, held in San Diego the same year, concluded that Cannon had in fact died of carbon dioxide poisoning. The carbon dioxide scrubbing beryllium canister on Cannon's Mark 9 diving rig was empty. The Sealab 3 aquanauts, including Cannon, did not set up their own diving rigs. The identity of the person who failed to refill the beryllium canister was never determined. Sealab medical officer Paul Jalen Weaver later suggested that Cannon would have realized his equipment was faulty had he not been suffering from extreme cold due to breathing pressurized helium. Surgeon Commander John Rawlins, a Royal Navy medical officer assigned to the project, also suggested that hypothermia was a contributing factor. According to John Pena Craven, the U.S. Navy's head of Deep Submergence System project, of which Sealab was a part, Sealab 3 had been plagued with strange failures from the very start of operation. According to Craven, while the other divers were undergoing the week-long decompression, week-long, holy cow, repeated attempts were made to sabotage their air supply by someone aboard the command barge. Eventually, a guard was posted on the decompression chamber, and the men were recovered safely. A potentially unstable suspect was identified by the staff psychiatrist, but the culprit was never prosecuted. Craven suggests this may have been done to spare the Navy bad press so soon after Cannon's death. As a result, it has been suggested that Cannon's unalivement was a murder. After reinvestigating Cannon's death, ocean engineer Kevin Hardy concluded in a 2024 article that there is greater evidence that Barry Cannon died from electrocution. And that is, I tried to find a mysterious story on short notice, but I was only able to find this. That is pretty complete. Let's follow up with that at 28 past the hour. Right? Yes. Old eyes here. With another of T. Plateau's suggestions. And that is... Oh, I better get rid of this one. This is the disappearance of Suzanne Lyall. This occurred around in my area. It says here, it happened in 1998 in Albany, New York. Albany is only maybe, how long a drive is it from here? 20-minute drive from where I am right now in this studio. So let's check that out. Disappearance of Suzanne Lyall. Thank you, T. Plateau. Let's see. Coldcase.edu. WRRV, the unsolved disappearance. Let's try the cold case first. Welcome, Frog Fan. Site can't be reached. Reload. Site still cannot be reached. How about that URL? Can that URL be reached? Let's go to the Wayback Machine. That's under Tools and Research. And it's at the top. Plug in that URL. And it has been saved. Apparently. That site may no longer exist. Let's look at it here. Thank you, Synchro. Here at web.archive.org is a archived webpage from coldcase.strohs.edu. And it's entitled The Suzanne Lyall Cold Case. Looks like we have a good read here. The Disappearance. Suzanne Lyall was only 19 years old when she disappeared from a location just down the road from the College of St. Rose. They have since closed down the College of St. Rose, I believe. Last year or the year before, they went out of business, folks. It was really sad. A lot of students lost out on a lot when they went out of business at St. Rose. As she was known to friends and family, Susie was last seen on March the 2nd, 1998, riding the bus back to campus after her shift that night at the video game store Babbage's. A witness reported seeing her get off the bus at the stop closest to her dorm, and her work name tag was found nearby 2 months later. Whether she got off the bus or not, she never of course she did, because her tag was found nearby 2 months later. Whether she got off the bus or not, she never made it back to her room that night. Her roommates did not hear the usual jingling of her keys in the door. Her boyfriend did not receive the usual phone call letting him know she got home safely. The next morning, Lyall's boyfriend notified her parents he hadn't heard from her. 3 days later, the authorities were notified and the search began. Lyall was never found, and the New York State Police still have an open investigation on her disappearance to this day. There is no evidence to indicate that Lyall ran away or otherwise disappeared voluntarily. Belongings that she used on a daily basis, like her computer, were undisturbed in her dorm room. She did not leave a note or tell anyone she planned to go away. She was a bright, intelligent young woman fascinated by computers. She loved the band Rush. At the time of her disappearance, she was a student at SUNY Albany, where she was majoring in computer science. Yeah, that's what they called it back then. Computer science. Now I think it's information science now, or information something or other. She worked part-time at Babbage's store in the Crossgates Mall and was active in early online communities. You could walk to campus from the Crossgates Mall, but you might not want to do that late night in Albany. Even though this is the area where this is more, it's not really suburbs, but it's not the city. She was and still is loved by many, which is why her case still hits so close to home more than 2 decades later. Although local authorities did what they could to find Lyall, every lead seemed to be a dead end. Her ATM card was used to withdraw $20 at a nearby Stewart's location at around 4 p.m. on March the 3rd, 1998, the day after she disappeared. But she was not seen by any witnesses. Witnesses also couldn't provide a description or details about the individual who withdrew the money from her account. But it was reported that the individual entered the PIN number correctly on the first try. Lyall's boyfriend admitted to the authorities he believed they were the only two who knew her PIN. In the years following Suzanne Lyall's disappearance, her parents, Mary and Doug, began to lobby for changes on campus. They founded an organization called the Center for Hope, and their work brought about the Campus Safety Act, also known as Suzanne's Law. The law requires New York State colleges and universities to be more prepared for similar emergencies and to report missing persons cases sooner. If Suzanne Lyall's missing person report had been filed even a day earlier, additional evidence may have been found. How the Cold Case Analysis Center is helping. Students at the CCAC are doing everything they can to gather more details about what may have happened to Lyall on that night. Forensic students are diligently examining all the data on her computer, hoping to find an indication of what may have happened. Because she was an avid computer user and participant in online discussions, there is reason to hope that her computer may contain helpful information that's waiting to be uncovered. Students plan to use the details they're able to find to get a better picture of Lyall's life as a whole. This may help them understand her as a person and possibly clarify the circumstances leading to her disappearance. In recent developments, CCAC students have begun to look for a connection to the serial killer Israel Keyes, whom advisor Dr. Christopher, looks like Knuckle, identified as a viable suspect in 2018. Keyes traveled across the country to commit his crimes and was known to have caches of weapons scattered across the country, including in a location approximately 3 hours north of Albany. There is reason to believe that Keyes was in the Albany area during the time of Lyall's disappearance, based on information that the students gathered and corroborated with Josh Hallmark's True Crime BS podcast. Prior to Keyes' death in prison in 2012, he did not disclose any information about his victims or their whereabouts, with the exception of 3, I guess the ones that they made him fess up to so they could try him. However, the True Crime BS podcast noted that Lyall's name was found on Israel Keyes' computer, including in a list of other missing persons known as the Nameless 44. Through continued research and investigation, the students at CCAC are exploring all potential routes to uncover the truth about Suzanne's disappearance. Welcome, Reuse 1972. Okay, it is now. Looks like 38 past the hour. Let us go to the next suggestion. And that is from Eldergrown. And I believe it's a web page. And where is it? And here it is, right here. Here at thunderbirdphoto.com. There's a story entitled The Vegetable Man of West Virginia. I'll just put down veggies. And the New Orleans Plantimal. I should say New Orleans. It's not New Orleans, it's New Orleans. I've been told. Here's Vegetable Man by Robert Jacob Woodard. And the anonymous author begins. Welcome, Cyrus. Gray Barker, pioneering flying saucer investigator, publicized a bizarre case encounter with the Vegetable Man of West Virginia in the 1976 issue of his newsletter. Barker was best known for his book about the Men in Black, entitled They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers, and for his UFO magazine, The Saucerian. Barker interviewed Jennings H. Frederick of Granttown, who claimed to have encountered the Vegetable Man, as Frederick called it, in the middle of July 1968. Let's get a better look at this. The young man was returning to his father's property after an unsuccessful day bow hunting for woodchuck when he stopped to rest under a maple tree. That is when he heard a high-pitched jabbering, like a record playing at exaggerated speed. Frederick understood the words, perhaps through mental telepathy. They were telling him that the speaker came in peace and needed medical assistance. Frederick reached into his pocket for a handkerchief because he was sweating, and instead of finding the handkerchief, he felt a sudden pain as if his right arm had become entangled with a wild berry briar. Withdrawing his arm, Frederick saw attached to his wrist a thin and flexible right hand and arm. A thin and flexible right hand and arm. Oh, someone else's arm. Okay. About the diameter of a quarter in size, and a plant-like green in color. There were 3 fingers grasping him, each about 7 inches long, with a needle-like tip and suction cups. The being tightened its grip on Frederick's arm and punctured a vein. Frederick heard suction and realized the creature was drawing his blood. He swiveled around and looked straight into the human-like face of his assailant. It had yellow slanted eyes, pointed ears. The body resembled, and this is a quote, the stalk of a huge, ungainly plant, end quote, masking remarkable strength. It held Frederick firm as it drained his blood, coupled with the hypnotic effect of the being's sing-song message. Frederick cried out. Suddenly the creature's eyes turned red and appeared to rotate, with spinning orange circles emerging from them. This effect transfixed the young man, stopping him in his tracks, as his pain and terror suddenly ceased. The entire transfusion lasted maybe a minute before the vegetable man released its grip on Frederick. It then ran up the hill, with massive leaps covering 25 feet or more with each bound, and it cleared a 5-foot fence with a few feet to spare. The abominable green creature, according to Barker, disappeared into the woods atop the hill, followed by a humming and whistling that Frederick suspected was its saucer taking off. The young man stumbled home and cleaned and bandaged his arm, the punctured wounds convincing him that the experience had not been just a hallucination. I need some cafe. Thank you, Cyrus. After about 15 minutes, I'm jumping ahead, Barker wrote that Frederick was an amateur rocket expert lately turned UFO investigator. Not by choice, but to prove his own sanity after multiple ET encounters. On the morning of April 23, 1965, his mother, Iva, had witnessed from the front porch of the family home a landed saucer on a hillside pasture. The disc was about 10 feet in diameter and 5 feet tall, silver in color, and rotated clockwise while emitting a loud buzz. There was a crystal dome that sparkled in the morning sun, with rows of windows underneath. The saucer hovered about 5 feet above the grass, although it appeared to be an elevator shaft with a doorway projected downward from the ship to the ground. About 200 yards away, a small satanic-looking creature, more animal than human, was collecting samples of grass and dirt and stuffing them into a small bag it carried. It was naked, with dark green skin, had pointed ears and a tail, and displayed no facial features that Iva could discern. A dark green umbilical cord-like cable connected the creature to its craft. The cable ran upward into the doorway. After about 15 minutes, the creature retreated into the doorway on the stem of the craft. The saucer rotated faster, then rose like a feather straight up into the sky. When Jennings, the oldest son, returned from school and heard his mother's account, he hurried to the landing site to investigate. There was a depression in the hillside where the elevator had rested, which the boy estimated exceeded a ton. He also found the creature's footprints, each about 6 inches long and displaying 4 clawed toes. Jennings judged the being to have weighed about 45 pounds. This guy sounds like an experienced native tracker. He collected plaster casts of the footprints, along with hair samples found within them, and sent them along with photographs of the site to the Air Force. The Air Force kept the samples and replied back with their explanation for the event. A weather balloon. Of course. It is unclear if the being Iva saw was the same or related in any way to the vegetable man her son would encounter 3 years later. Frederick told Barker he had experienced additional UFO sightings, including one with time distortion. Maybe he means missing time. He was nervous after reading books by John Keel that described a pattern in which contactees were visited numerous times, causing great challenges in their personal lives. Frederick ultimately joined the Air Force and spent the final days of his enlistment with NASA. Though obtaining security clearance, Frederick explained in vague terms there had been a major lapse in security that resulted in him learning of a secret project beyond his authorization, which Barker presumed to involve UFOs. Frederick received a dishonorable discharge, and 4 months later the men in black came calling. He was awoken in the middle of the night by a red flash and saw a small canister the size of an apple come bouncing into the room, emitting red vapor. Before Frederick could pull his .38 pistol out from under his pillow, he felt a needle stick into his left arm. 3 men dressed in black turtleneck sweaters, pants, and ski masks climbed through the windows, joining whoever had stuck Frederick with a needle. Frederick overheard them converse about having gassed the rest of his family and having darted the dogs, and confirmed that Frederick would be out shortly. As the shadow of unconsciousness enclosed him, he saw the men put on gas masks, pocket the canister, and open a briefcase containing a tape recorder. They covered his face and began to ask him about his UFO sightings, what he thought they were, the nature of time and of the future. What he thought they were, the nature of time and the future. When Frederick awoke the next morning, no one else in the house reported seeing anything strange. Okay, looks like we got some debunky stuff here. I wonder what he was discharged for. Vegetable Man sketches by Robert Jacob Woodard. The Vegetable Man brings to mind another strange case, continues the author, although without apparent otherworldly provenance. That being the Plantimal of New Orleans. I did it wrong again. That was my default pronunciation many years ago. New Orleans. There is a New Orleans somewhere, but it's not the city. It's something else. Thank you, Two Feathers, for the super chat. Two Feathers says, "Love you, Bill. Thank you for bringing us together again. Love you too, Two Feathers." You're the best. This fantastic article details a violent encounter with a missing link between the animals and vegetable kingdoms, titled Horror in a Swamp. Although it took place in New Orleans, the news appears to have originated in the UK, running exclusively in British and Australian newspapers. As published in the February 6, 1924 Daily Record and Mail in Glasgow, Scotland, Horror in a Swamp. Botanists fight for life in plant's grip. New Orleans, Tuesday. This from the newspaper article, I imagine. A horrible flesh-eating plant animal rooted in the earth like a plant, but with the skin, muscles, and bony skeleton of an animal, is said to have been discovered in the depths of a great swamp 40 miles from New Orleans, by Joseph Villeroy and George Gaston, 2 botanists who were lost for over a week in the heart of the swamp. The plant is said to be carnivorous and to devour small animals. The botanist believes, says a correspondent, that the plant has a missing link between the plant and animal kingdoms, since it possesses many of the characteristics of both. They further say that every stem of this strange plant is built like that of an animal. A wrinkled skin forms the outer surface of the plant's structure. The mysterious plant grew near the edge of the water on a small island and resembled a palm tree to some extent. Although its general color was gray. Fragrant yellow flowers growing near the foot of the tree attracted Villeroy, who attempted to pick them. As he stooped, he was suddenly seized by several of the large fronds of the freak plant and slowly drawn towards the main stem. Calling loudly, Villeroy at the same time seized the fronds that held him, but to his horror found that they were huge muscles, like those of a giant. When Gaston ran to the assistance of his companion, he too was seized by the creepers and made prisoner. And it was not until the 2 men had used their camp axes to cut through the bone and sinew that they were able to free themselves. Their task occupied them a couple of hours, because as they cut off some of the creepers, others seized them. Other creepers. Several small animals, such as squirrels and rabbits, were caught by the plant during the time the men were held there captive. And the sight of the snake-like, skin-covered creepers darting out to catch the terrified creatures was like a nightmare. When the small animals were captured, the life was squeezed out of them. They were lifted by the fronds to a big opening towards the top of the main stem, serving as the mouth of the plant. The other man said that as the axe fell, the plant writhed in apparent agony, and red sap, resembling blood, oozed from the wounds. Our fearsome vegetable men and other botanical horrors, spreading terror in America's South. When out in the woodlands and wetlands of southeastern United States, it might be best to keep alert to the sudden twitching of the nearest tree. Good stuff there. Now 54 past the hour, time for our next suggestion. This one is, how did that happen? No, that's right. Oh, I just followed the links, the uplinks up there. Okay, then just take that somewhere else. And next one is, okay, I'm not sure which is which. I think this is the next one. This is Green Teas. Thank you, Green Tea, for the suggestion. This is at yahernandez.com or jahernandez.com. written, I assume, by J.A. Hernandez. And it's entitled The Warminster Thing and Decades of Unexplained Phenomena in England. And there's his name, J.A. Hernandez. And Mr. Hernandez begins, or states, The Warminster Thing timeline of events. December 25th, 1964. In the early hours of Christmas morning, strange phenomena gripped Warminster and its surroundings. At Nook Camp, near the village of Heytesbury, soldiers reported hearing an intense sound, described as a massive chimney being ripped apart and scattered. A droning sound accompanied the noise, this taking place in the UK, I believe. Early that same morning, 5 miles away in Warminster, Mrs. Mildred Head was woken by the sound of giant hailstones battering her roof. The noise transitioned into a loud hum before fading to a whisper. Around the same time, a woman named Marjorie Bye, walking to the Holy Communion service at Christ Church, heard a crackling sound. She was struck by shock waves so intense they momentarily immobilized her. Roger Rump, the Warminster postmaster, also reported an odd humming tone alongside a terrific clatter, like his roof tiles were being torn off and slammed back into place. The accounts from that morning marked the beginning of what would be later dubbed the Warminster Thing. January the following year, in other words, 1 month later, reports of strange phenomena intensified as locals began to talk about their experiences. Arthur Shuttlewood, a journal of the Warminster Journal, published his first article, Bell Hill Mystery, documenting these early accounts and calling for further reports. Here we have a newspaper article, Strange Noise at Warminster. And it just says the same thing down there. It doesn't say where it's from or anything. Let's read it. Setting off for church at 6:30 on Christmas morning, a Bradley Road Warminster housewife heard a crackling noise from the direction of Bell Hill. At first she thought it was a lorry spreading grit on the hill. But the noise grew louder, came over her head, and passed on across Ludlow Close. She will not let me use her name because she's afraid of being laughed at. The noise sounded like branches being pulled over gravel, and there was a faint hum. It was quite loud, but not above talking level. The sky was dark, but brilliantly starlit, and she could see nothing above her. Explanations have included static electricity caused by wet power lines, natural static electricity caused in certain weather conditions, a satellite, or Father Christmas taking off. This shy lady would be glad to hear from anybody else who heard the noise or could give some explanation. Her knees were knocking all the way to church. At least they gave us the whole article. Looks like it ends right there. And the author continues. Supposedly around this time, a resident on Ash Lane reportedly discovered a garden filled with dead pigeons, with no visible cause of death. But decades later, researchers determined the story of the pigeons may have been retroactively embellished. I guess this is part debunk and part not. February of that same year, at the Longleat Estate, witnesses reported hearing high-pitched droning noises. A flock of pigeons was allegedly struck mid-flight and found dead in a woodland clearing, while the accounts were documented by Arthur Shuttlewood. Again, debunky. March of that same year, Mrs. Joan Brown reported her family's cat reacting with violence to strange sound waves that rattled her home. The cat vomited throughout the day, and other pets in the area, including dogs, displayed signs of distress. These incidents correlated with reports of ongoing acoustic disturbances in the town. In the summer of that year, reports of UFO sightings in Warminster's skies began to emerge. Among the most notable was a fiery red cigar-shaped craft, observed by the vicar of Heytesbury, his wife and their son, over the local churchyard. Additional sightings described glowing orbs that hovered silently, darting rapidly and displaying advanced maneuvers. These accounts spurred public interest and increased Warminster's visibility as a UFO hotspot. In August of that year, a lorry driver near Callaway Clump encountered a fiery orb streaking towards his vehicle before veering off into the sky. Later the same night, Rachel Atwell was awoken by a loud droning noise and observed a pulsating light hovering approximately 600 feet above the ground. She described an intense sensation of pressure in her head, which ceased when the light disappeared. 17 days later, a public meeting at Warminster Town Hall drew a huge crowd, with locals and visitors gathering to discuss the ongoing reports of the thing. Interestingly, UFO sightings surged afterwards. September 10th, 1965, still the same year, the Daily Mirror newspaper printed a photo taken by a local factory worker, Gordon Faulkner. Gordon captured what he claimed was a flying saucer. The Thing, a strange story of the goings-on in the skies above a country town. In Wiltshire, so different. No. Warminster. Maybe the one isn't within the other or something. So that is the proper article. Welcome for you, peace. It looks like peace, police, love, look, effery. We're going to call you For You Peace. Welcome, For You Peace. While skeptics question authenticity, the photograph became an iconic artifact in the Warminster saga and is well known worldwide. Yeah, this article itself, and it doesn't look like we can read it. It says Warminster Journal here at the top. As the story goes, Gordon took the photo sometime in August and handed it over to Arthur Shuttlewood to do with as he saw fit. Arthur then took it to the newspaper. While skeptics questioned its authenticity, it became known worldwide. I just read that. Yeah, I think they repeated it twice. Late in that same year, again, we're still in 1965. By the end of the year, Warminster had firmly established itself as a UFO hotspot. Arthur Shuttlewood organized sky-watching events at Cradle Hill and Clay Hill, drawing locals and tourists eager to witness unexplained phenomena. Businesses began capitalizing on the surge of interest by offering UFO-themed merchandise and guided tours. In 1966, the BBC aired Pie in the Sky, a documentary investigating the mysterious sightings over Warminster. The program featured interviews with witnesses and explored various theories about the origins of events. The year after that, police constables Roger Willey and Clifford Waycott gave an interview to ITN, recounting their encounter with an unidentified flying object in the night sky over Ockhampton. The officers described seeing a star-like object performing erratic maneuvers, which they found inexplicable. Illustration of the Warminster thing by police constables. Huh. It's a picture of it. Cool. During the interview, they sketched a detailed drawing of the UFO, depicting a symmetrical pointed shape surrounded by wavy lines. Their testimony, which came from trained observers, added credibility to the growing body of UFO sightings across the UK at this time. Then in the early 70s, reports of UFO sightings in Warminster began to decline, but Arthur Shuttlewood continued his work, publishing several books on the subject. In 1976, the bicentennial year, the Fountain Center, a UFO research facility, was established in Warminster. It publishes the Fountain Journal. In the 1980s, interest in Warminster diminished with fewer sightings reported and less media coverage. During this period, elaborate crop circle formations appeared in the Wiltshire countryside, including areas around Warminster. These patterns sparked fresh curiosity and drew tourists and researchers. By the end of the 80s, Warminster's connection to the unexplained had become more historical than ongoing. Still, new sightings sometimes cropped up, though never like the reports of the mass sightings of the 60s. Needs some agua, flavored agua. It's lemon flavored tea type thing. That is ice cold. Can you discern my ice cube? It's the lighter brown part on the top. Big ice cube. It's about that. The ice itself is like that thick. It's ice cold. Okay, what is up next? Let's do this at 9 minutes after the hour. That's the next suggestion, and that I believe is here. This is from Eldergrown. If Two Feathers says it looks delicious. I make it thick. I pour so much less water than they advise on the powder packet. It's all sugar-free, of course. I only do the sugar-free. But if I get it thick enough, it has a nice sweet taste to me. All the flavors I do that with. Like stout, suggests Two Feathers. Exactly like stout. This suggestion from Elder. An article written by Julia Bonavita at foxnews.com entitled UFO Tracker Maps. UFO Tracker maps eerie clusters of unidentified objects lurking beneath U.S. shorelines. We're being lied to. So that's water UFOs, right? Beneath shorelines means underwater, I imagine. We'll find out soon. Both California and Florida coasts. Tea Plateau asks, do you use real tea and real lemon? No, I just use the powdered packets, the sugar-free powdered packets. Is it just a, but there's no story here. It's just a video? Looks like. Let's try to find the story. UFO tracker. And we'll go to a search engine. Here we go. It is a news article at both Yahoo and the New York Post. Let's try the Post. And we have another suggestion here. Yeah, that I think is from G-Man, that suggestion. And we'll X out of the ad. Oh, good. No one can hear that. Here at NewYorkPost.com is an article by the same name by Chris Nazy. Mr. Nazy begins. The truth is under there. A popular UFO reporting app has recorded thousands of sightings of USOs, unidentified submersible objects, near U.S. waterways, phenomena which high-ranking U.S. Navy officials warn could pose a threat to national security. Enigma, which touts itself as the largest queryable historical sighting database for global UFO sightings, claims it has received reports on over 30,000 UFOs and UAPs since its launch in late 2022. But the sightings have not been limited to the skies. Reports also came in about strange objects rising from the depths of the sea, or plunging into the water without so much as a splash. Pentagon-reviewed footage has documented instances of an unidentified crash diving into or emerging from the water without damaging the vessel or even making a splash, prompting alarm from some officials. As of August, Enigma has also logged more than 9,000 mysterious sightings within 10 miles of U.S. shorelines or major bodies of water, 500 of them within 5 miles, with more than 150 of the reports describing objects hovering above or descending into the water, according to Marine Technology News. The U.S. states with the most reported USO sightings were California and Florida, both among the top 3 U.S. states with the most ocean coastline. One of the most bizarre reports includes phone camera video of unexplained green lights traveling beneath the surface of the ocean. The app has released maps plotting out the reported sightings, represented as clusters of orange dots running up and down the east and west coasts. UFO sightings are nothing new and are often dismissed as crackpottery by many scientists or relegated to the stuff of science fiction, but retired Navy Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet warns UFOs with the ability to go from air to sea without crashing or even creating a splash could have world-changing ramifications. The fact that unidentified objects with inexplicable characteristics are entering U.S. water space, and the Department of Defense is not raising a giant red flag, is a sign that the government is not sharing all it knows about anomalous phenomena, Gallaudet wrote in a March 2024 report. Alarm bells were raised in 2019 when the USS Omaha recorded a UAP that vanished into the ocean without a trace after buzzing a Navy fleet off the coast of San Diego. Video of the incident was verified by the Pentagon. Displaying capabilities, Gallaudet said, jeopardizes U.S. maritime security, which is already weakened by our relative ignorance about the global ocean. In his 29-page report for UFO-focused think tank Sol Foundation, Gallaudet said there's a documented pattern of similar phenomena being reported. Quote, pilots, credible observers, and calibrated military instrumentation have recorded objects accelerating at rates and crossing the air-sea interface in ways not possible for anything made by man. End quote. He wrote. Groovy, man. We need suggestions, people. We are at 17 minutes past the hour, and we will be needing suggestions. Next up, the last one I have currently on hand is from Gotcha Man. And it's at newsobserver.com, written by Josh Schaefer, entitled North Carolina Sheriff. Scary 911 call with a man screaming, "That's not human," really happened. Huh. They don't have... Wait a second. Can I draw this back to the beginning? Can I change the speed of this? Can I pause it? Let me pause this first. Settings. No speed setting. Let's try one at a time here. Oh, that's where he says, that's not human, that's not human. What do they say at first? Let's just try to see. Play. Are you okay, sir? Pender County 911. What's the address of your emergency? I'm driving on 210. I just crossed the Black River. And I thought I saw a guy standing on the side of the road bleeding. Let me just increase this for everybody here. I'll just leave it there. And did you? You saw a man standing on the side of the road? Yes, ma'am, and it looked like he was bleeding. When I drove by, I had my high beams on, and all I could see was some streaks of red going down his body, starting at his head. What was that, sir? That's not human. That's not human. Sir, are you okay, sir? There's something in the bed of my truck. Okay, what's in the road? No, it's not on the road. It's in my truck, in the bed. There's something in the bed of your truck. Yes, ma'am, I just turned on my bed light for my truck, and there's something in my bed. Okay, sir, when you say something, what do you mean? I just knocked it off the bed of my truck. It went over my roof. Okay, what is it? I don't know. Like a turkey, a deer? No. Turkeys are pretty big. I don't know what the hell that was. I don't know if you heard that bang before I started screaming, but I heard a bang. I did. When I turned on, that's why. Looks like some words are missing here. Maybe they're unintelligible. Thank you, T Plateau. Oh, was that Rhino Rex contribution? I'm sorry, Rhino Rex. I guess this is Rhino Rex's contribution. Perhaps. I heard a thud. And back to the man that you saw? You said he was covered in blood? It looked like he was bleeding from his head and heavily, because it was all going down his torso, and he had no shirt on. And was he white or black or Hispanic? He was white, and he was staring at me as I drove by, just blankly. And that's it for that. The story begins in 2021. A man called 911 in Pender County, reporting a bloody man and a strange creature on a dark country road. In 2025, the story grabbed TikTok attention and raised eyebrows. Here are excerpts from the actual legitimate 911 call. And the story, here's Mr. Schaefer's story. The call came in just before midnight. A young man's voice, somewhat rattled, telling a 911 operator he'd seen a man streaked with blood on the side of a country road, staring back blankly in the dark. As the dispatcher in Pender County tried to pin down the man's location, just over the Black River on North Carolina's Route 210, a loud thump came over the line. "What the hell?" the caller screamed. "That's not human. That's not human." "Sir, are you okay?" the dispatcher asked. "There's something in the bed of my truck." So begins the story of Pender County Creature, a North Carolina horror story captured on real-time audio, in which one frightened-sounding caller described a pale-skinned monster landing in the bed of his pickup at 50 miles an hour, then flying over the roof when he hit the brakes. The recording of the shaky-voiced monologue just scared the absolute hell out of me. Has already topped 3 million views on TikTok and more than 600,000 on YouTube, thanks to Carolina Case Files, a series dedicated to the unexplained. But what sets this Tar Heel creature farther apart from a dozen other paranormal encounters is that it comes stamped with credibility. Both Snopes.com and Pender County Sheriff Alan W. Cutler confirmed that the midnight screeching can be heard on the real 911 call. The sheriff said, "I don't know for sure what he saw or what he experienced that night, but it was obvious he was distraught. I'm afraid it's just one of those things in this world that we may not ever know the answer to." But like many paranormal stories, this one includes some troubling factors. A few. Because this is all debunky stuff. The 911 call definitely happened. The dispatcher may be a little unorthodox, but it's clearly the sheriff's office that got this hair-raising report, checked it out, and found nothing. It likely circulated for years in law enforcement circles until a budding YouTuber heard it and grabbed it. Rational me thinks the driver fell victim to a prank, whether for kicks or a fraternity initiation, or for a lost bet. And somebody dressed up like a bloody nightwalker while somebody else threw a dummy from a tree. Or maybe the driver hit a deer in the dark and flipped it over into his truck bed, scampering back over the hood when he hit the brakes. But Halloween me hopes the creature still exists, leaping into random pickups, joyriding on the back roads of Pender. I'd like to think I'd slow down and let it into the cab. Maybe let it pick a radio station and offer it a pack of nabs. That's only human. And that's the end of that story. That's a good one. Okay, next up. And that was the not human call. Next up, we have a suggestion here from, I think it's from T Plateau. Let's put it right here. It's 26 minutes past the hour. And let's see what she has for us this time. Okay, we have the Wall Street bombings of 1920. Wall Street of 1920 from Encyclopedia Britannica. FBI page covers it. That's FBI.gov. Mysterious Wall Street. BOM Bing. History Tools. America's Deadliest Terror Attack. All That's Interesting. Bygonely. A Look Back. What looks the best on this page? Probably the history one, but that's usually kind of short. Let's try the All That's Interesting. Let's see. That looks pretty good. Okay, we can reduce the size of that a little bit. Here's an anonymous story at allthat'sinteresting.com entitled Inside the 1920 Wall Street BOM Bing, the first major terrorist attack in New York City. The 1920 BOM Bing of Wall Street killed a total of 38 people, making it the deadliest terrorist attack in the 20th century in New York City. Oh, because the other one happened after? The other one happened after. It's September of 1920. An abandoned horse-drawn cart exploded in the middle of Wall Street, the bustling financial center of New York City. The explosion unalived 30 people instantly and injured hundreds of others nearby. Just outside the steps of the most powerful banking institution in the world, J.P. Morgan Bank, were the severed limbs and charred bodies of innocent bystanders. But authorities, this is the Wall Street, authorities struggled to solve the case of the 1920 Wall Street BOM Bing, and it was not until decades, even a century later, that historians would stumble upon a suspect, which is considered one of the earliest terror IST attacks in the history of the country. At the time, it was the worst terror IST attack the city had ever seen. At 12 p.m. on September 16th, a horse-drawn cart stopped in front of the headquarters of J.P. Morgan Bank. Address, 23 Wall Street, New York City. Not only was J.P. Morgan the most powerful financial institution in the world at the time, was also located right in the middle of the city's burgeoning 7-mile financial district, also known simply as Wall Street. Wall Street had become the symbolic hub of commerce due to the fact that the New York Stock Exchange was located there. Today, the stock exchange is the largest in the world, with an equity market capitalization worth over $25 trillion. But back in the beginning of the 20th century, the exchange and the city's Wall Street district were still in their infancy. Nevertheless, it was home to many banks and businesses, and it would soon be under attack. Inside that horse-drawn cart were 100 pounds of dynamite and 500 pounds of iron weights. The driver easily came through undetected amid the hustle and bustle of Wall Street. The driver dismounted and left the explosives on the busiest corner of the financial district during lunch hour. 1 minute later, a massive explosion shook the area. 30 people and the horse were immediately unalived in the blast, as shockwaves from the bomb sent the heavy iron weights ripping through the air. Another 8 people died from their injuries within a few days, and an additional 143 were left seriously injured. Inside the bank, a 24-year-old clerk was found with a piece of debris lodged in his skull. Outside the bank were charred bodies and severed limbs. The explosion was said to be so strong that a trolley with passengers 2 blocks away was knocked over by its force. Policemen and even financial workers on their lunch break rushed to the scene to provide aid. The cops quickly commandeered any automobiles they could find to transport people to the hospital, and all trading on the stock exchange was suspended for the day. At the time, the Wall Street BOM Bing of 1920 was no doubt the deadliest terror attack in U.S. history. Even now, the destruction of that blast can be found right around 23 Wall Street. Welcome, Tina Tomaszewski. Tina's one of the original gangsters of night terrors. I'm glad you got a good rest there, Tina. No problem. Rest is good for you. Thank you, Tina. Where the building is still pockmarked with shrapnel. Through the 1920 BOM Bing on Wall Street was one of the earliest incidents of terror ISM known in the U.S., it was not the nation's first. 10 years earlier, a labor agitator planted a BOMB outside the office of the Los Angeles Times. 20 people were killed. The building was destroyed, but at least investigators were able to nab the assailants. Then in 1914, a trio of anarchists accidentally set off a bomb meant for John Rockefeller inside their Harlem apartment, killing 4. The explosion on Wall Street, however, was different. BOM Bings typically targeted specific individuals or public figures. Yet the explosion on Wall Street seemed to have no goal other than perhaps claiming as many victims as possible. Additionally, BOM Bings were often claimed by the individuals who had orchestrated them, but nobody took responsibility for the attack on Wall Street. Investigators struggled to make an arrest over the course of the next 3 years. Authorities had first learned of a tennis player who sent postcards to friends, warning them to avoid the area on that date. But it turned out the man was mentally ill. Investigators also tried to track down whoever had made the shoes for the horse involved in the attack. But that clue led nowhere. But there were plenty of suspects. Among them were Italian anarchists and Russian communists who had emigrated to the United States following the Bolshevik Revolution. Another theory posited that the explosion was a part of a failed robbery on the nearby sub-treasury building, where 900 million in gold bars were being moved that same day. But not everyone was convinced the bombing was a calculated attack. Department of Justice agent Frank Francisco believed it was just likely an accident. Quote, this is what Francisco told the New York Times after the bombing. If an attempt had been made on the Morgan offices, I believe it would have been made at night, or some radical would have secured a position in the institution and planted an infernal machine inside. But these were simply guesses that never led to any official conclusion. And in the rush to reopen the New York Stock Exchange as quickly as possible, city officials may have likely accidentally disposed of any evidence that could have aided the investigation. The 1920 Wall Street bombing stayed unsolved for decades after the attack and is still unofficially solved to this day. It wasn't until the FBI reopened the case in 1944 that authorities concluded anarchists had been likely behind the bombing. As World War I drew near, anarchists believed that capitalists, who made huge profits off their unprotected workers during the wartime, needed to be eradicated in order to bring equality to society. The year before the Wall Street bombing, followers of the Italian anarchist leader Luigi Galliani, known as the Gallianists, carried out a letter bomb campaign that targeted prominent businesses and political leaders. The Gallianists had launched a series of bombings across the country just a year before the explosion on Wall Street. As such, authorities came to believe that anti-capitalists or anarchists were likely responsible for the 1920 bombing of Wall Street. But investigators right after the attack failed to produce any hard evidence linking the Gallianists to the bombing. With the benefit of hindsight, some historians concluded the bomber was a Gallianist named Mario Buda, an anarchist who was believed to have been responsible for several similar bombings across the country. Further supporting this hypothesis is the simple fact that Buda had allegedly rented the very same horse-drawn wagon that was used in the Wall Street bombing and had been in New York City on the day of the attack. Shortly after the bombing, Buda left for Italy and never returned to the U.S. Several people who claimed to know him said he admitted to the attack, but of course the proclamations remain hearsay, which is why to this day the case of the Wall Street explosion remains officially unsolved. That was a good one. And at 39 past the hour, coming up to our last suggestion. My apologies, Eldergrown. Let's see if we have any other suggestions here. Let's see. Do I have any old ones up here? No, I've used every one here, actually. Did anyone see any suggestions fly by? Okay, let's come up. Let me come up with something off the top of my head. Then what haven't we done? We've done some missing peoples tonight. We did a lot of UFO and alien stuff. Of course, the alternate Earth one. Let's do another parallel Earth one. Let's do a woman from an alternate universe, or something like that. Or no, let's do the one that happened in Spain. What is that one called? Oh gosh. We could do some paranormal 911 calls. Oh, thank you, Tina. Thanks for the notice. Did he change his night? I hope not. I won't have anyone to promo. Man from Torrid is good too. Let's do that. Do that one. Paranormal 911 calls would be good too. I'm going to try Rhino Rex suggestion. Paranormal 911 calls. Thank you, Rhino Rex. Let's go up to this search up here. Is it still here? Yeah. Yeah. So let's go up here and change this to Paranormal 911 calls. Or 911 calls. A common search. Okay. What's been your most paranormal experience on a call? That on EMS. Only for Halloween. Thank you, Tina. Whew. I love promoting Peter. Paranormal 911 on Rotten. Oh, that's some kind of movie. Here's one. An unsettling paranormal 911 call came into the Pueblo police. Was there audio playing on that one, folks? Was there any audio on that? Damn it, looks like there was. Okay, let's that looks just like a TikTok. Heard no audio. Okay, thanks guys. Everyone's saying no. Thanks guys, appreciate it. Thank you, T Plateau. And thank you, Tina, and thank you, Two Feathers. This is all yeah, not for us. Let's get out of that one. Paranormal 911. It looks something hopeful looked like it was up here at the top. Phantom 911 calls. This at 911 dispatchers. Or 911 dispatchers. In the subreddit at reddit.com, in the subreddit 911 dispatchers. This one from Sig Sauer Power 320. Active dispatcher question. Very curious to see how many dispatchers out there receive phantom 911 calls and how often. I work in northern New England and I receive them quite regularly. The frustrating part is that my department is not the largest. So wasting 2 officers to check an address for an emergency when we know there isn't one is getting to us. Most of the time, the 911 line will ring, the dispatcher will answer, and all we will hear is dead air. I will disconnect and attempt to call back the number. 99% of the time, it'll ring once, connect, and again, dead air. In-house searches will almost always show negative results. We've contacted the help desk, and they pretty much tell us they'll pass it along to the carrier, which is Verizon in my area. We've also been told if the carrier cannot resolve it, we can petition the state to block the number from 911, which the state is naturally hesitant to do, because said number could be assigned again in the future. So my question was, has anyone else ever dealt with this kind of thing? And how often? Question, answer, question. When I say question, answer, it's a question like, why do you dispatch on them? We don't at my agency unless there's a reason. Department policy. It's a CYA thing. I wish we'd be smart enough to decide on our own, but we can't. I don't think we're getting paranormal here, just dead air calls here. Let's try another thing. This is the 911 calls. We want paranormal 911 calls. Yeah, we get most of them's videos. Go, here we go. Ghost 911 calls are a growing phenomena. Or a growing problem, actually. Open link in new tab. Here at civilbeat.org. Written by Denby Fawcett. And Denby begins. My husband and I were out in Leh last week, enjoying a few days' vacation at the beach, when I got an alarmed call from my neighbors saying there were 6 police cars in my yard. My neighbor, Rich Wyckoff, says the police officers were professional and polite. One officer took the time to tell him what was going on. The officer said the police department had received what they call a dropped 911 from our house, meaning a phone call came into police communications with no caller on the other end. When police dispatchers get dropped calls, they say they always phone back to speak to the homeowner, to ask if he or she made the call and determine the nature of the emergency. When no one answers at the home where the 911 call originated, HPD routinely sends multiple units to investigate because of the possibility that crime might be underway. A homeowner could have been unalived or be in a hostage situation or be suffering a medical emergency. Gotchaman says, here's something we used to do in the past, call a creepy phone number. Oh, is that an example of one? Yeah, since this is along the same lines, let's do that. I have a new phone, by the way. The other one gave up the ghost after like 3 decades, maybe. That was a really great phone, that yellow one. Now I got this white piece of crap. It works pretty good, though. We're going to try a phone. It's for a mental asylum. Hopefully it still works. Not really, hopefully. Call a creepy phone number. Oh, God. Okay. We do speaker here. Where is it? Here. It's not showing up on my audio. Let me increase the volume. The max volume. That's not even showing up. That's not even showing up on my volume. Yeah, this phone kind of rots. I'm hearing it. You can hear it. You can hear it. Okay, Elder. We'll go for it then. Okay. Calling the mental asylum. They're busy, says Two Feathers. No, that was taking too long to dial. Comes up with that noise. Okay. So. Couch. 1. And I can't see the number anymore. 1303. I better write it down. 1309 431 5222. Here we go. Because I'm soon going to lose it from the chat, I'm sure. Thank you, Elder. Okay. Start again. Now that sounds like a mental asylum. Holy cow, that is so freaky, G-Man. You son of a gun. That scared the hell out of me. Holy moly. Gotcha Man laughing here in the comments. That is super creepy, G-Man. Thank you, Gotcha Man. Perfect way to end the show, which is what we're going to do right now. Peter's not on tonight, so because of Halloween. I guess he did show a day early. But next week, he will be back. And I will be reminding you again then. If you haven't caught my Wednesday video, please do so. Please seek it out. They're pretty good. Because every video portion that comes from my old show, and it's just like a short little 10-minute, 15-minute portion, is followed by some kind of spooky or odd or unusual featurette, which I've edited myself. Just like I used to put on the end of the old videos, the original Night Terrors videos. Until next Saturday, may God help and protect us all.